Lieutenant General Richard Clark wants to assure all of us that developing innovative leaders of character for the Air Force and Space Force remains the primary mission of USAFA. But many of the 54,000 plus graduates of this institution are questioning the current direction. I recently sat down with General Clark to get a better understanding of what challenges the cadet wing faces today. In this, our second interview segment, we explore the topics of honor and character development. We also take on more challenging conversations like sexual assault prevention. I'm Heather Ubaraga, formerly Heather Healy, class of 1999, your host during these conversations, which are brought to you by the Association of Graduates and the Air Force Academy Foundation. This next segment is going to be on character development, and I just want to jump in by asking you about your leader of character framework. Why did you think that you needed to develop that? What problem was it really trying to solve?
Developing leaders of character has always been our number one priority here at USAFA. It's our mission. And in my view, to do that, you have to be able to operationalize it. It can't just be the words behind it. And we have our core values, our Air Force core values: integrity first, service before self, excellence in all we do. But what does that look like in action? And so the leader character framework really, it helps us as we develop our cadets, but it also helps them to understand what it looks like when they actually get it right. And there's a quote that I love. It's by Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu, centuries ago. Your thoughts become words, your words become actions, your actions become habits, your habits become character, and your character is your destiny. And these cadets, they're our destiny, our country's destiny. They're the ones that are going to lead us 15, 25 years from now, so we have to get it right. So when we talk about our core values, to me, those are the thoughts and the words. That's the internal that our cadets, we hope that they embrace and that they embody. But what does it look like when they turn into actions and habits? So integrity first, that ought to look like a person who's living honorably. They live honorably in every aspect of their life, regardless of whether somebody's watching or not. Mm-hmm. Not just their professional lives, but their personal lives, their all-encompassing life as a citizen of our country. So living honorably is the first, I think, core action that we would want to see. When you talk about someone that puts service before self, we want to see someone that lifts others. And a lot of times we've all seen leaders who lift themselves. They put themselves before the organization. What we want to see are people that look at their teammates, their squadron mates, their classmates, their wingmen, and lift them to be their best possible selves. Even before their own well-being, they're looking to others. So lifting others is that action that we want to see and those habits that we want to develop. And then when we talk about excellence in all we do, a lot of times people say, well, excellence means you're the best. It means you've reached the pinnacle. Well, that's pretty hard to measure. But what you can measure is, are you elevating your performance every day? Are you better today than you were yesterday? Are you better this time you participate in an activity than you were the last time you did it? So what we want to see are people, when we talk about excellence in all we do, who are elevating their performance and their team's performance to get better and better and better, to raise their level of performance at every opportunity. So again, our leader character framework, what we want to see in our cadets are people who live honorably, lift others, and elevate performance. And that's a development that we can strive for and we can see, and it's actually external. It's the habits and the actions that we want to see from our cadets.
I really like that, because as a cadet, I sometimes had a hard time understanding how especially excellence, how you just described it, how that related to me, because I didn't think of myself as particularly noteworthy cadet of any kind, fairly middle of the road. But that doesn't mean that you as an individual can't make small improvements every day, and that you can't ultimately end up somewhere better than you could possibly have imagined because of that sort of small incremental discipline approach.
If it's a mindset for you, then you're always trying to get better. You're always trying to get smarter, faster, stronger. Whatever it is that your profession requires of you, you're always trying to get better all the time. And if you do that as a lifestyle, you're going to achieve higher than you ever imagined.
Right before you became superintendent, there was a fairly significant cheating scandal. And one of the first things you must have had to deal with when you became superintendent was this. And in relationship to your leader of character framework, how did you handle that? I mean, obviously, living honorably is number one.
Absolutely. That incident, it happened during COVID, and it was when all the cadets were at home. If people may not remember, but that was in 2020, and it was really hard for us to work through that because it was during COVID. We were dealing with so much other, so many other problems and issues that just to try to get through COVID. But because it was dealing with honor, we had to confront it. We had to face it right then and there. And so what we did was we looked at the whole incident. We had what we call a design sprint, where we stepped back and looked at our honor processes. We looked at how we develop cadets, and we brought in a lot of people to help us. We brought grads in. We had grads from as far back as the 60s. We had cadets obviously involved in this. We had staff and faculty, and we brought in a few other people that just had some good knowledge of our honor processes. And we looked at our entirety of our honor code. We looked at how we develop and train our cadets, and looked for any idea that might be relevant to helping us get through this. And what we came up with were sort of 3 different looks at it and 3 different areas that we had to work on. First, it was, how do we develop people when they first come to the academy? Because we're getting people from all segments of society. And what we realized was we had to kind of meet them where they were and then get them where we wanted them to be. And so that was the first part. The second part was, how do we get our staff and faculty involved more in our honor processes? Because they're the exemplars, the role models. They have to be a part of our honor process, and there can't be any sanctuary in the academy where honor isn't relevant. And so having staff and faculty involved was really important. And then buy-in from our upperclassmen, because ultimately it is a cadet-owned honor system, and our code has to be internalized by our upperclassmen if they're going to impart that to our freshmen, our underclassmen, our 4 degrees. So those 3 elements are developing our new cadets when they come in, involving our faculty and staff, and getting the buy-in from our upperclassmen were the 3 elements. And I think that we came up with some really good ways ahead to help us to develop better in a better way, and to build more ownership among our cadets to help them internalize it. But to me, the best part of it all was that we moved our honor development and our honor training further to the left. Rather than spreading it out over 4 years, which we still do, we have training that goes across the board in a cadet's career. We really front-loaded it when cadets get here in basic cadet training, so that they start off on the right foot and they start off understanding what we require of a person who lives honorably. So our cadets were involved, our cadets owned it, and our upperclassmen have really taken to this. In fact, the results right now, and I'm not ready to spike a football or anything like that, but last year we had the lowest level of honor code violations that we've had in 10 years.
Oh, wow.
And this year we're already on track to have an even lower number. Now, you can't draw conclusions from that. It's only been a year, and we're into year 2 after the things that we've put into place, but it's promising. It's promising anyway. So we'll continue to do that, and we continue to look at our processes and develop them as we go. Again, it's about getting better every day. It's about looking at where we are and how do we improve that at every opportunity.
I think living honorably is directly tied to this next question, which is about sexual harassment. And I feel very fortunate that the 4 years I was at the Air Force Academy, I can say there are a lot of things I didn't love about my academy experience, but I felt safe. I felt safe on campus. Sure. I don't know if that's the case for everybody. I know it's not. And I can say that my time in the Air Force, active duty, that I also didn't experience it. But it's a reality of the world we live in. You talked about a cross-section of society coming in, creating the kind of leaders that we need in this world. And there's a zero tolerance for it, period. What are you and your team doing to prevent sexual harassment?
So in our efforts to take sexual harassment and sexual violence out of our program here, it's not just prevention, but prevention is the cornerstone. It's about prevention, it's about reporting, and it's about taking care of our victims. And all three of those are elements of our sexual prevention and response program. And it's also about holding people accountable. When we find out that somebody is guilty of a sexual harassment or sexual violence crime, then we do hold them accountable. And like you said, there's some people here at the Academy that never experience any harassment or violence, but one incident is too many. It's something we can't have in our Air Force. We're here to lift others, to build teams, to ensure that everybody feels included and that they feel like they belong here. That couldn't be more counter. Sexual harassment and violence couldn't be more counter to those ideas. So the things that we're doing, we have a lot of prevention programs in place right now to help educate, to help inform people of what sexual harassment and sexual violence is, but also of what it does, how it tears down organizations, how it tears people down as individuals. So we're looking at our programs now to see what really works, because there are several programs out there, but we want to focus on what has the biggest impact on turning the tide of this. And it's something we've been dealing with here at USAFA for a long time, too long. It's something that the Department of Defense has been dealing with for a long time. And it's something that other colleges and universities have been dealing with for a long time. So we're not unique in that fashion. We're doing a design sprint right now to look at what prevention programs really do have an impact and help. And then how do we implement those in the best way so that the men and women here at USAFA understand what the problem is and that they can be the kind of leaders that don't just stand by and watch those problems happen. Even if they're not involved in it, they can't just let it happen. They have to be a part of the solution. So educating and developing our leaders so that they are prepared to help us turn the tide on this and make it a zero tolerance situation is important to us, and we're taking it head on.
Right. I appreciate that. I think prevention is the key, but it does happen. And how do you support the victims when that takes place?
So yeah, the support for our victims is critical, because we have to help them to get through it and to be able to keep moving to become the leaders we need them to be. So every month, I or our vice superintendent review every case, every situation that a person has been in as a victim. And we ensure that they're getting all of the support that they need from all of our helping agencies, and that they're able to deal with the issue so that they can continue to move forward as a victim. It's important for us to ensure that they're getting what they need, but it's also important for our academy, because these are valuable. Every cadet here is a valuable member of our academy, and they're going to go out and do great things in our Air Force and Space Force. But if we don't help them to deal with these issues, it's gonna hamper them. So we review every case. We ensure that they get the help that they need, and continue to grow and develop.
If I'm a young female cadet at USAFA right now, and I'm hearing you say these words, and I've gone through an experience, and I know that there are elements of it that aren't working the way they should or the way you want them to, who do I tell?
Well, I hope that they would use their chain of command. And when I say that they trust us, when I say us, I'm talking about the entire chain of command. Their cadet chain of command, their permanent party chain of command, but also their peers. And we do have peers in our squadrons, peer cadets, that we call them teal ropes, and they actually wear a teal rope on their sleeve so that they're very recognizable. And if a cadet's not comfortable coming to their chain of command, that they can go to one of their fellow cadets and be honest and open with them. And those cadets can help them to understand, where do I go for help? Where do I go to report? How can I report? Do I report restricted? Do I report unrestricted? There's a whole process that can be a bit daunting, especially for a new cadet. But having a fellow cadet that can help them through and navigate that system, we believe is critical. And these peer cadets get a significant amount of training so that they can help their fellow cadets when the time is right. And so ideally, they would feel comfortable going through their chain of command, but if they're not, they can go see a fellow cadet and they can help them as well to find the right help that they need.
So that's fairly new. When I was a cadet, that certainly wasn't in place. So these individuals with teal ropes, they are they have special training in how to deal with sexual assault victims.
They do.
Okay, great. And then they're allowed, and they're embedded in every squadron?
Every squadron.
Okay.
And they're highly effective. They know how to talk to a fellow cadet. They know how to encourage them, but also how to respect their boundaries. And if a cadet's not ready, then they understand that and they respect that and they help them to get where they need to be to deal with the issue.
Thank you for joining USAFA Superintendent Lieutenant General Richard Clark and me for our second unfiltered interview focused on the current status of USAFA's Cadet Wing. I hope it was as enlightening for you as it was for me. Please join us after the Thanksgiving holiday for our third segment, when we'll ask what it's like to be a cadet today, and we'll shed some light on the rise and fall of application numbers at USAFA in recent years.